Finally, the long-awaited Cuphead DLC came out. Almost a whole year ago. I know I may be a whole year behind the trend for reviewing this game, but I only played it like a month ago, so it's not like I could have done a retrospective back then. Today, I'm going to cover the whole DLC for Cuphead, and whether it's worth the 5-year wait, and in general, how good of an expansion it was. Let's get into it. Just like the base game, this DLC looks amazing, even better than the base game in my opinion. Hand-drawn 1930s art style oozes with charm, and you can easily tell how much effort went into the designs and animation. The music is also really good, with Hanu Hoopla and Aisle 4 being my favorites. The gameplay is still the same, although this Chalice changes Cuphead's moveset pretty heavily. She's basically this game's easy mode, since she has 4 HP, a double jump, a parry dash, and an invincible roll. I think Miss Chalice was both a really good and kind of bad addition to the game, since while she mixes up gameplay and adds a fun new twist, she makes the game a lot more easy, since her better air mobility can dodge a lot of tricky projectiles, and her hit point part 2 basically make her unkillable. These changes also make every non-airplane boss except Saltbaker and Moonshine Mob free on expert. Then are the new weapons. 2 of the 3 are insanely overpowered and easily top 4 weapons in the game. Those 2 are Crackshot and Converge, both breaking the game in different ways. Crackshot is a homing weapon that rewards for aiming, which is already super good, but it's got better DPS than the previous homing weapon, Chaser, basically making Chaser almost useless. The only weakness of this weapon is that it can't reliably hit fast-moving or far-away targets, but the pros far outweigh the cons. Next is Converge, which is kind of an upgrade to Pea Shooter, with its gimmick being that it splits into 3 bolts, and that they don't stop after hitting a target. This shot is amazing at taking out minions, and is super useful on running gun stages, but is a lot more situational than Crackshot. Overall, both of these shots are super useful and worth getting. Then there's Twist Up, arguably the worst shot in the game. So bad I've never gotten footage of it. Yeah, this shot sucks. It has mediocre DPS, it's impossible to hit with, and it doesn't have a cool gimmick like the others, unless being bad is a gimmick. I think as a whole, the new shots were a great addition to the game, even if one was nearly useless. Next are the charms, with 3 new ones being added, being the Astral Cookie, Heart Ring, and a Broken Relic. I've already covered the Astral Cookie, so let's go to the Heart Charm. This charm allows you to heal from parrying, with the only downside being that your super meter doesn't fill from parries. Overall, a pretty cool charm, but the real thing we need to talk about is the Broken Relic. I'm assuming that everyone watching this video knows about the quest attached to the relic, but if you don't, mute the video until Henry Stickmin stops distracting you. 3, 2, 1, go! So the relic is a side quest involving a secret boss that eventually leads to one of the best charms in the game. After buying the relic, you can visit this graveyard, and with the relic equipped, you can interact with the stones. After solving a quick puzzle, you fight one of the most frustrating bosses in the game, the Angel and Demon. After you commit a murder on these 2 idiots, you have to kill a certain amount of bosses, and then it turns into a Divine Relic. The Cursed Relic is an interesting challenge, since you have to beat a bunch of bosses with 1 hit point and your weapons changing every time you let go of the shoot button. Although this is a fun but quite difficult challenge, but beating it gives you basically the same thing with nearly every charm and full HP. What holds it back is the weapon swapping, which makes it near impossible to use. It also makes the music bad. Overall, a fun thing to mess around with. Okay, guys who got distracted, how are you? Is your day going well? Okay, it's time for the bosses. There are 6 main bosses in the DLC and 5 mini challenges in the King's Leap. I'll cover the King's Leap first, since it's not as good as the main bosses in my opinion. First is the Pawns, which kind of suck. I don't really enjoy this fight. It's kind of a trend with the King's Leap. Cuphead sucks for these. These seem to be designed around Chalice's parry, not Cuphead's, which is a bit weird to me. The Pawns move is way too fast to reliably hit them with Cuphead, and it's just an overall annoying fight to me. Next is the Knight, which is my favorite of the Leapers. This fight is based around baiting out the Knight to open up his weak spot, which is a really cool gimmick for a fight, and one that I thought could have made for a really good full boss. I really don't have any complaints about this boss, since it's really interesting and a fun fight. Next is the Bishop, who I absolutely hate. The idea is cool, having to hit every candle to hit the boss, but the boss's attacks are so annoying. The balls he spawns are so random, and the hitboxes make no sense. Just look at this dodge. They also always seem to spawn inside me. I think this was just me having a bad experience with it, but this is a boss I don't enjoy at all. Now, the Rook, which is a really interesting boss, and probably the hardest of the King's Leap, but it's not the best in my opinion. This one is basically impossible with Cuphead, and it's kind of annoying to dodge the floor sparks. I think it's certainly a cool boss, but not the best in the game. Finally, the Queen, who is kind of a dumb fight since the cannons suck to use. I can never tell if they will hit the Queen or not, and it just doesn't feel right to aim. Speaking of, you can't even aim the cannons, these dumb mice do. The line is also extremely hard to get past without Miss Chalice, and the Coffer's attack is an attack I like when you're not trying to shoot a cannon, since the boost always seems to shove me into a gem. An interesting fight, but not one I really like. Alright, on to the real bosses, with the first being Glumstone the Giant. The first two phases aren't amazing to me. They feel way too spammy, and there's some things that you can't control that will get you killed. The first phase has 3 main attacks, and the Geese and Bear attack basically show my issues with this fight. The floor is dangerous, and if you step on it, you'll take damage. So you need to stay on the pillars. The pillars rise, fall, and disappear randomly. These platforms can lift you into the geese, or there will be a platform to stand on during the bear attack, which feels as cheap as Calamaria's Medusa stare. The gnomes are also pretty annoying, but Crackshot destroys them instantly. Next is the second phase, where there is way too much crap on screen, and there are a million gnomes flying around and burrowing up that you need to be constantly moving and paying attention to. And then there's the ball. This phase is kind of a darn if you do, darn if you don't situation. Either you pay attention to the gnomes, the ball gets you, or vice versa. You need a roundabout to beat this phase, since it's the only weapon I found reliable to deal damage to the boss and finish the phase quickly. The final phase is pretty cool, and the platform gimmick doesn't feel cheap. This is the only phase of this boss I actually like. Overall, a fine boss. Next is More and More Freeze, the most forgotten of the DLC bosses. This boss seems pretty basic at first, but it slowly ramps up during the fight. The first phase is pretty standard. We just beat up an old guy who can pull a whale out of his ass. Then he turns into a snow golem, which turns into a refrigerator. Finally, he explodes into a snowflake and proceeds to attack you with ghost snow cones and electric eyeballs. This is also a boss where I got the S-Rank achievement on, so I kind of like it for that. Certainly a boss I enjoy, but not the best boss in the game. Now, probably the most well-known boss in the DLC, the Howling Aces. This fight has 2 main gimmicks, one being the moving platform that you can control, and we'll get to the other one in a bit. First is the Bulldog, which isn't bad. All the attacks are pretty easy to avoid. Then the small dogs, who also aren't bad, are just a bit annoying. Finally, the infamous final phase, with the other main gimmick of snapping my neck. The best way to beat this phase is to twist your neck to the side, which is kind of uncomfortable. Luckily, the attack in the sideways mode isn't too bad, but it is still a bit annoying to me. Lasers in the neck snapping part aren't that bad. Up next is Esther does way too much bullcrap on screen with Chester. This boss kind of shows my main issue with the DLC bosses, being that they feel spammy and kind of cheap. The basic game felt like you had to learn the boss's attacks and get better. The DLC feels like you have to learn and hope a gnome doesn't burrow up your ass. This boss's first and second phase have a ton of crap to dodge, and the final phase has a pretty tricky to dodge sausage pattern. The third phase is good. I really like this boss, but a ton of attacks makes it a bit less good in my opinion. Finally, we get the Moonshine Mob, who said to be a bug moonshine mafia. The first phase against the spider is fine, the mobs can be a bit annoying though. The light bug is super cheesable, and the anteater kinda sucks. The snail is also a fun twist at the end. Alright, we've got all the ingredients, so it's time to bake the Wonder Tart. Salt Baker, hello? Oh my god, he's huge! Salt Baker is the twist villain of the DLC, though not an amazing twist villain. He could really have used some build-up, since his reveal is such a heel turn from how he was introduced. The fight itself is probably the hardest ground boss in the game. The first faces so many attacks that it's really difficult to not get hit. The lives especially make this hard. Also, this dumb flame exists. This is what makes the first two phases awful. The flame blocks you off, and will eventually get you hit by any of the other attacks. In phase 2, it adds even more clutter to an already super cluttered screen. Also, there are two of these stupid flames in Expert, which makes it nearly impossible. I think I would have enjoyed these phases a lot more without the flames. Phase 3 isn't that good, and you can get unlucky with the saw blade. And the final phase is fine. You basically need a homing weapon, but it isn't that bad. We escaped the crumbling bakery successfully, and Salt Baker is quite sad about this. Take that, sucker! That's what you get for trying to cook someone's soul. Well, I guess that's the end of the DLC. The epilogue is pretty funny and it's a pretty good song. Salt Baker gets redeemed, and that's the end. Overall, I think the DLC was a really good expansion to the base game of Cuphead, and it's unfortunate that it got delayed by the virus for so long. I think the bosses are the best looking bosses in the game, but aren't the most fun to fight, and all the weapons and charms are pretty fun to play with. I think that the DLC is definitely worth the wait. 8 desert lives out of 10 cup souls. Well then, thank you for watching. If you want to see more content like this, like, comment, or subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.